I'm gonna be there because I'm doing my rotation in the booth. I don't know if I can give away or not.
Highlighted the whole thing is when you were in the.
That would be impressive, I know. How many are in the band?
Wow, okay.
We'll have you to the next board meeting. We call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. So the town clerk was not able to line up one of our area ministers for tonight. So we'll open the meeting with a silent prayer. Pray for a productive board meeting. Pray for our community and county and state, and pray for the people of Ukraine. And I'll close it in a minute or so. Let's pray.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start the meeting. You can keep the noise down, please.
Man, thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can be seated. So, tonight, before we get to the real meat of announcements, I wanted to make one announcement, and that is, I received notification, and you all probably heard it on the news, that 26 between Brevard Road and Long Shoals is going to be closed, like start 8 o'clock tonight, 8 o'clock Wednesday night, 8 o'clock Thursday night. And I think that's until, I think it's for a long time. It's over all night, I think. So just stay in Black Mountain. It'd be a good, man, if you can do that, that'd be a good thing. So tonight, we are going, at announcement time, we are going to honor our swim team. And Josh, you want to kind of head it up and bring them in and introduce and let the public and those present know a little bit about the great accomplishment. Come on in. Why don't you come in and just right out here? I don't know how many of you there are, but I think in total there's 75 people on this swim team.
There's 74 out there.
Oh, this is
Great.
That's great. The tallest people can't stand in front of the mayor.
This is so crazy.
Yeah, come on in. There you go. The average age of those in attendance just dropped by about 30 years. Yeah.
So this is our 2022 youth swim team, Tarantula Parks and Recreation. It is a volunteer-led swim team. It's coached by Beth Dalton Rathbone, I believe. Make sure I get that right. Beth started as a coach in 2014, and then she became an employee of the town as our pool manager in 2015. But this is a completely volunteer led initiative, and we just wanted to take a minute to honor them and their pursuits this year and winning their conference championship for the first time ever.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your routine and how much your team practices, and just, I know it's a pretty rigorous sport.
It definitely is. With us,
Well, there are so many kids. We have grown, we're the biggest team in the league, and this year I had 194 swimmers. And when you're talking about 194 swimmers, that not only encompasses for the valley, but we do have part of some from McDowell County, we have some from Asheville that come. But in order to put that amount of kids into that pool, which is not very big. I mean, it looks big if you're just one or two people coming. We actually have to do 6 hours a day in practice. So we have 2 hours in the morning, and then we're open to the public throughout the day, and then in the afternoon, literally when the pool closes at 5:30 in the afternoon, then we practice all the way up until about 9 o'clock at night, sometimes a little bit later. So on a volunteer status, yeah, you probably I put in over 40 hours just volunteering every week throughout the summer for these kids. I do have 3 other amazing coaches who help coach with me, and but because it takes a village to run 194 kids. When you think about some of these other athletics, you usually typically have one coach to maybe a maximum of 20 kids. We only have 4 coaches for 194 kids. So, yeah, I mean, it is definitely intense. And these guys, they work their hind ends off. There's some of these kids that practice 4 hours a day.
What other question? Tell the public and everyone here about the conference, your competition.
Oh,
It's
goodness.
like 4 or 5 or 6 counties.
Well, yes, we compete against Granite Falls, Forest City. Granite Falls is near Hickory, for those of you that don't know. Then Forest City, Rutherford County. We have Lenore, who just joined our league this year. We have Valdez, which is Burke County. We have McDowell, and then there's us. And we've been fighting for years because once upon a time I was a swimmer and I swam for McDowell County. And then, but at the time that this team got started, I lived here in Black Mountain. And then I made some promises that I felt obligated to keep. So even though I don't live here, I live in McDowell County. I'm upholding to those promises that I made many, many years ago and coming back and helping these guys here. But we grew to the biggest team in the league, even though we are the youngest, except for Lenore, who just made it up.
Everybody gets all the picks they want. I think we're gonna have to ask you to leave, or we won't be able to have.
Well, we appreciate you guys for having us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deb.
Oh, welcome to come see our nice big trophy that's hanging. And Mr. Davey and his crew, they actually built me a shelf. I anticipated we were gonna have it, so. Check it out. He built my shelf before the season ever started, so, it sits up there nice and high on the pool deck now.
We know that.
All right, guys. Thanks. Wave bye. Say hi.
Thank you, guys. Congratulations. Congratulations. Yes, awesome. Congratulations.
Tell them, see ya. It's just amazing. See ya. Y'all have any master plans for a bigger pool? I'm all in.
I was saying, yeah, exactly. Very.
All right, well, everybody, our swimmers are leaving the room. If I could, let me call the meeting to order. Okay, great, thanks. Just a reminder that all the council members are required to vote unless they have a direct financial interest in any item that's on the agenda, or their family members. And the council members are obligated to bring that up if they sense they have a conflict of that nature, and the town attorney will help us sort through it if we needed to. We have two proclamations and recognitions this evening. The first being Ella's Clean Air Project. And that is,
Sure, I'm gonna let Mr. Jamie Matthews, present this to Ella, or at least discuss it to let everybody know what Ella accomplished.
Yep. come on up, Ella, that's right.
You can sit right here if you want to. You feel more comfortable sitting here?
Yeah.
Okay, I figured you would. So I'm trying not to butcher this, but this is to recognize another awesome young person in the town of Black Mountain. So anyway, the schools in North Carolina, through the North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center, Keep Our Air Clean Student Art Contest. Ella drew a picture for this contest. And it's from kindergarten all the way up to high school. And she was number one pick in elementary. They took one from each, one from elementary, one from middle, and one from high school across the whole state of North Carolina. They received 70 submissions across the state. And I've gathered some of this information from your mom and on site and everything. So anyway, she drew it. She won for elementary. At that point, they took, and you may have seen a lot of these around town, they took her picture and put it on a sign where those signs were sold for $50 each in town and was supported very much by the town residents, where she raised $600 to buy trees to promote clean air.
Right.
So three of those trees were planted at Veterans Park. One was at Lake Tomahawk, one was at Cragmont Greenway, and one at Flat Creek Greenway. So awesome job.
Yeah, tremendous,
Congratulations.
great.
Thank you.
So Ella, why don't you come up and make sure that the folks that we're gonna be looking at get to see you, and congratulations, thank you. For your good work.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
I'd like to shake their hand too.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
There you go, Ellen.
Good job.
It's gonna be kind of hard for the rest of the agenda items to live up to our standards here. And so, Chief Parker, are you up to do a recognition of our police cadet? There you go.
Yeah, he's taller than me, that's
I know.
this is supposed to be the way it goes. So, Mayor, Council, Community, I wanted to take a quick moment to recognize someone for a great achievement. Cadet Daniel is a success story of the Black Mountain Police Department Cadet Program, in which Lieutenant Kidd and Lieutenant Staten have invested much time and effort into the program. So I want to give them a lot of credit. Before we recognize today's achievement, I want to take a second to acknowledge a cadet program. It's a mentorship program for young adults ages 14 to 20. They have an interest in law enforcement and community investment. In recent months, cadets have been on fishing and camping trip. They've learned police functions, and they volunteered their own time last weekend on their own to clean up the Black Mountain Museum. And so they did a lot of work there last weekend. They also cleaned the police department in front before National Night Out and did an amazing job. They volunteered their time for the Christmas parade and numerous other events. So when I found out about the Criminal Justice Fellowship Program was offering scholarships, I immediately had Lieutenant Kidd reach out to Daniel and ask him if he was interested. He applied and he received the scholarship, and we're very proud of all the hard work that Daniel's put in. Since he received that, we wanted to congratulate Daniel in public for his hard work and effort, and can't wait for him to become an employee of Black Mountain and continue to be a success story, because I know that is one of his goals. So I wanted to congratulate Daniel, and he's got a little achievement award, And then this is his actual scholarship paperwork that he's got. So we only expect you to be ready for us in about 2 more years. All right, congratulations.
Thanks, David. Congratulations.
Great job.
Citizen comments. Marion,
Caminets.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, if you will, just state your address, name and address, and thank you for forwarding your copy of your.
I'm going to speak fast. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address the town council. My name is Marion Kamenetz. I live at 360 Genesis Circle in Black Mountain. I've been living here for just over a year. As representative of the Friends of the Community Garden, a member group of the Black Mountain Parks and Greenways Foundation, as well as a volunteer in the community garden, I'm here to advocate for making the position of the garden manager a full-time professional level management position. I'd also like to thank those of you who recently attended the Empty Bowls Tea Party in the Garden event, co-organized by the town and the Friends of the Community Garden. The event highlights the need to help persons in our community experiencing food insecurity. Western North Carolina communities have higher food insecurity rates than state and national averages, with 1 in 4 children and 1 in 6 adults facing hunger and poor nutrition. Our goals were met. We raised over $10,000 to support an intern who helps the garden manager, plot renters, volunteers, and groups that visit and work in the garden, and for educational programs that provide a way to learn about all aspects of resilient organic gardening. We are currently at the height of the summer harvest season. Each year, the community garden harvests 4,000 to 6,000 pounds of produce that is donated through Bounty and sold to those in need. The donated foods reach over 700 families in our community per week. Plot renters and volunteers now number over 150, all of whom reap the physical, mental, and spiritual benefits of the garden and community. With all of that good work, it is truly sad and demoralizing that the critical position of garden manager is not classified as a full-time professional management position. Similar positions across the country show that compensation is between $42,000 and $47,000 plus benefits. From North Carolina state government job descriptions and classifications, an agricultural technician 2, well under the level of responsibilities of our garden manager, starts out at around $35,000 plus benefits. For Buncombe County government job classification evaluation studies from 2021 to 2022, jobs were evaluated based on complexity, scope of knowledge, problem-solving, contact with others, and leadership factors. When scored, totals denote whether the position is categorized as support, professional, or management. Comparing our garden manager's job description with these elements, the position should be considered management. Buncombe County management position salaries average 55 to 65 plus benefits, and that's the low end of the range. Black Mountain's garden manager earns $18 per hour, not to exceed 1,000 hours per year. This equates to $37,440 per year with no benefits. I'm requesting an audit of the garden manager's position to be reconciled with Buncombe County's classification standards. This process would objectively evaluate the job description to determine the appropriate classification and pay grade. We urgently need a full-time professional management level position for the garden manager with commensurate salary and benefits. A part-time position does not even allow for the job to get done, but a full-time position would not only get the job done, it would also allow us to grow the community garden's impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. Sean Sloan.
Sean Sloan, 115 3rd Street, Black Mountain. I too am speaking representing the Friends of the Community Garden and supporting the position that we do need a full-time garden manager. And there is too much to do in the community garden for any one person in a part-time position. So what do we need to do to make it a full-time position? Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Phil Cassetti. Phil.
Mayor, I wish to emphasize,
Name and address.
I'm Philip Assessi. I live at 15 Highview Drive, Black Mountain. Have since 1997. I was here last month. We plan to have the International Day of Peace recognized with a proclamation from the town council. I hope that proclamation will include the same as it did last time, which meant spending money on peace rather than on nuclear warfare. And also, this year, we have a relationship between racism and peace. So we'd like those two things to be considered in the proclamation. I personally have something that I want to talk to you about. Namely, does the state control the parking on Broadway, or do we have some control of it? Recently, we had to maneuver around bicycles behind a big car, or SUV. It just is ridiculous that we have diagonal parking, people trying to back into traffic. Probably we should rethink and move to parallel parking. Also, in the same light, we should have assigned a definite crosswalk from Tyson's parking lot to the city parking lot. And it should be marked, and it should be definite that it is a crosswalk. So these are my suggestions for this week. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Phil.
The state does control it.
But
Pardon
we
me?
can work with them, yeah, we can work with NCDOT, but the state controls it.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. All right, I think that does it for citizen comments. So, Jennifer Billstrom is going to speak to us about the Buncombe County, the referendum that's going to be on the ballot for the county this fall in November. Thank you for being here tonight, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me. So my name is Jennifer Billstrom. I live at 825 North Occoneechee, and I'm here to talk to you about the Better with Bonds Buncombe Votes Yes campaign. That's a mouthful. Okay, so I serve as the campaign co-chair representing the open space bonds. And with me today is Greta Bush. She's our assistant executive director for the campaign. The campaign leadership is made up of volunteers from the community, including Mark Hunt, who is the volunteer executive director. And there's staff time that's been donated from nonprofits like Mountain True. So the campaign was required to file formally and follow regulations for a bond campaign. Our job is to educate the public, and our goal is to get people to vote yes for the bond referendum. We're not members of the county administration, and the best part is, after November 8th, the job is done. So, the commissioners have voted to add 2 bond questions to your ballot on November 8, and if approved, the bonds will provide $30 million for open spaces and $40 million for housing. These are general obligation bonds, which are commonly used by local governments to raise significant amounts of money for big projects to do now that are funded over years. And these bonds will be 20-year bonds. State law requires that they be voter approved, and state law requires that the bond the funds from the bonds may only be spent on the programs laid out by the bonds. That includes conservation, greenways, trails, open space, and affordable housing. So let's talk about how the funds can be used to address some of our neighbors' biggest concerns. So according to the Buncombe County 2043 Comprehensive Plan poll, 80% of respondents say that the natural environment is what they love most about living here. 76% of respondents are struggling with housing costs, and that's their biggest housing concern. 50% of respondents say that losing the natural areas and open spaces and agricultural land is the biggest concern for the future. And 57% of respondents say that greenways and trails are the top needs of our parks. So you might recognize this happy couple in the picture because they are our neighbors. This is Dustin and Beth Donovan. They moved here about 11 years ago from Pittsburgh because they wanted to live in the mountains in a place where they could enjoy an active outdoor lifestyle. They rented in Swannanoa. Now, they have a combined income that exceeds the area median income. More about that in a moment. They searched for a home for years and were unsuccessful. Houses were either too expensive or someone would come in and give a cash offer above asking and win the contract. So eventually, a friend offered to sell her home without a broker, without a realtor, and under market. So that's the assistance that they got to be able to move from renting to owning in Black Mountain. We all know that that kind of deal is not going to come up, and we need a better plan. So let's talk about the challenges. So the open space challenges, the USDA puts out an annual report, and they reported that in 1987, between 1987 and 2017, we lost a lot of farmland in Buncombe County. We had 104,000 acres and it dropped to 73,000. That's a 30% decline. In a separate analysis by American Farmland Trust, depending on what we do next, we could lose another 10,000 to 18,000 acres by 2040. So I feel that farming is a vital part of our local economy, and it's key to having a local food supply source. So what is happening out there? So the cost of land, as cost of housing goes up, the cost of land is going up. This creates a huge barrier for anyone who wants to enter into farming. That means farms are being sold and developed, which impacts our open spaces and leads to sprawl. So currently, there's a waiting list of farmers who would like to conserve their land. The Buncombe County program for doing this is 20 years old, but it doesn't have enough money to meet this demand. We're not just losing farmland, we're also losing iconic view sheds and open spaces. So what about the housing challenges? North Carolina Housing Coalition reminds us that if a family's housing cost is above 30% of their budget, then they are cost burdened. And the sad news is that in Buncombe County, 30% of our households are cost burdened. That's 33% of our households. That's a lot of numbers, but try to imagine the faces. It's a lot of people who need help affording their housing. So how can the bonds help? The commissioners have set some goals. The first goal is that 20% of Buncombe County land will be conserved by 2030. Right now, 18.5% of the land is already conserved. That is mostly, it's 78,000 acres, and it's mostly federal land through the Pisgah National Forest and the Blue Ridge Parkway corridor. So to meet this goal, we'd have to conserve another 6,000 acres by within 8 years. So to do this, we will focus on open lands and farmlands in the rural areas of the county. The second goal is for adding 2,800 to 3,150 affordable housing units by 2030. And that land will be focused in areas close to jobs, transit, schools, and services. So if it passes, the open space bond of $30 million will help with conservation. It will help us reach that goal. It will help with open space and increase access to recreational areas. And it will provide money for greenway infrastructure. And the breakdown is anticipated to be $20 million for conservation and open space and $10 million for greenways. So what about affordable housing programs? $40 million could make a big difference in assistance that promotes home ownership and increases rental units for people who earn from 30% to 120% of the area median income. And for us in Buncombe County, that's $75,500. And remember the couple I told you about that had a higher area median income? They still struggled. They really struggled to find a home here in Black Mountain. So this little graphic is here to help you understand which of your neighbors might be included in receiving this kind of assistance. It's also important to note that home improvement programs for existing homes fall into this category. So adding better insulation or fixing broken windows are examples of improvements that can keep older neighbors comfortable and safe in their homes. So the city of Asheville passed their first bond referendum in 2016, and so far they've spent $17.6 million from their bonds. They've purchased 32.5 acres. They've added 403 affordable units and 92 more in the pipeline to be constructed. So how do they do this? They have partners. This is just a really very small example of the partners that we would leverage to stretch the bond dollars as far as possible. So example is Mountain Housing Opportunities can access federal funds, state funds, tax credits. They can apply for grants. They can receive private donations. And that's what it's going to take to make the bond program successful and stretch the dollars as far as possible. So let's talk about transparency and oversight. The county administration already has programs that are in place that include citizen participation and oversight. And here's a list of some of that structure. So these advisory boards report to the Board of Commissioners on a regular basis. And there's an annual independent audit that's conducted. Of course, the bonds would be included in that audit. There's a transparency website, and a page would be added, at least one page, probably more likely two, for transparency about the bonds. More on that in a minute. If it's passed, 2 full-time bond project managers will be hired by the county. And they will be charged with managing the projects, providing updates to commissioners and the public, including a review of investments, goals, timelines, and progress. So this is an example of the transparency dashboard that Buncombe County has on their website today. This happens to be COVID relief funding, and they're describing how it's been spent to date. We expect that the bond transparency page would look a lot like this. And if you haven't visited this, I really encourage you, because every time I visit, they roll out more transparency. And it changes nearly weekly. So passing the bonds would increase opportunities for affordable housing and would supercharge conservation efforts, saving natural land and beauty, but what would the tax burden be? So the tax burden has been estimated using a worst case scenario, and it's $32 per year per household. And there's some assumptions that have been made to get to that number. It assumes zero population growth. If Buncombe County has zero population growth, something has gone wrong. It also assumes that all bonds will be issued at once instead of over the 7 years that are allowed. That will not happen as well. They will be issued when they're needed to minimize the amount of interest we have to pay. So it also assumes that you have a home assessed at median value. So a yes vote for the bonds is a vote for helping our neighbors and our children now and into the future. We all need a place that we feel safe. Children need homes where they can focus on their schoolwork and get outside and play and learn about the natural world. So I encourage you to vote yes. And again, I thank you for allowing us to speak. There's a couple ways here that you can dig in deeper. It's the betterwithbonds.org is the campaign website, and you can see the county also has a page devoted. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Jennifer, do you know how the term of the bond, how long it is? Is it
20 years.
Council, any questions?
Thank you, Jennifer, so much for giving that presentation. Do you know what percentage of the bonds has already been, or what projects, let me rephrase that, has already been identified for funding from the?
There's only 2 projects that have been defined as being recipients of this fund, and they are related to greenways. And they are the Woodfin Greenway Project and the Inca Greenway Project. And a big part of why, well, 2 reasons those 2 have been called out. They're a big part of our master plan, and the partners are already at the table. So that's really key. Especially for Woodfin, most of the funding has been identified. So we're just going to get them to the end on that project. What I see happening here in Black Mountain is the Black Mountain Greenways and Trails Committee is working really hard to start creating those partnerships. They just won a grant from the National Park Service, which is going to be key in teaching them how to work with the community to possibly get acquisition of easements so that we can build greenways. So that's a really good step forward for us.
Great, thank you.
Jennifer, thank you for your work on that. This is great. Has there been discussion, $40 million for affordable housing is not going to go a real long ways, and I understand partnerships are key, but has there been discussions about where that's going to happen yet, or are everybody waiting to see?
What has been shared with the campaign is that those projects would happen in more dense areas, possibly in land that the county already owns. But the goal would be to provide a wider variety of housing to bring the supply up closer to meeting demand in places that are close to work and schools and services.
Thank you.
So is it a one vote? I mean, both projects are up or down?
Two questions. Yes, yes.
Okay.
Anyone else?
And that's November 8 unless you vote early.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, Jennifer, thank you for coming
Thank
out.
you.
Thank you for your work in the community and
Thank
in
you.
this regard. And Jessica, time for a planning department annual report.
A little update. This annual report is different than annual reports you've had out of our department in the past. This is only related to development. We'll do transportation in its own right. We will do stormwater in our own right, because we would otherwise be here at about 10 o'clock. And I don't think anybody wants that.
I don't want to stay till 9
I
o'clock.
know. I had some coffee just before, so you're in luck tonight. All right. And I broke it. I immediately broke it, Savannah. There it goes. So the downtown development projects, it has been the year of redevelopment downtown, which has been really exciting, if not causing a little sidewalk issues. Foothills is working on a really neat outdoor dining concept, and they're working on their outdoor patios and building additional restrooms. Taco Billy, we should see them opening up in the next several weeks. I do not know the name of the glass blowing studio, but that is the old Rug and Jug, if I can sound like I've been here longer than I actually have been. But they have the lovely mural painted by some Warren Wilson students that is really cool. They were excited to have some temporary art up on the windows of the plywood that's been up for a very long time. The rail yard is an interesting mixed-use concept that's going on the corner there across from the post office. We're going to see retail and brewing and all sorts of interesting things happening there. It is a three-phase project on one parcel. First project is starting to wrap up and phase two is going in. And the Pure and Proper, which is the cutest building rendering I've seen in a while. I'm so excited to see this building come back to life on our main eastern side of downtown. Sandwiches for everybody. We've also continued to see progress on our phased residential developments. Sweet Birch is on the downhill slope, only 13% left. Tudorcroft is about a quarter of the way done, and Paget Place is about 3/4 of the way done. So that's moving on at quite a clip. One thing I've been able to do over the last couple of years now is have more data to work with because we moved to an permitting software to let me track more things. So one thing that's been interesting to watch, both in conversation and in the permits coming through, is the uptick in reinvestment in existing structures. We've seen this in commercial and in residential structures. In 2021, we had a real uptick in how much people were spending on their houses, which I thought was really interesting. We saw some planning influences, some influences from the pandemic happening, where people were spending more time at home and wondering how to make home the best place to be as we started working from home more, things like that. These numbers have moderated a touch, but they still remain elevated over years before the pandemic. Nope, that also did not need to be fixed. Those numbers are right. That was a note to myself that I deleted after I sent it to Savannah. We had 100 residential new residential permits last year. That does include replacement manufactured homes as well as new manufactured homes. So you will see a small discrepancy between 88 and 100 in a different slide, but that is why. When we went back and looked at the number of residential applications by type, we see we are over half single family, and then over a quarter in two family, and then we have secondary and manufactured in the back. I will say vast majority of those two family units are associated with Sweet Birch, and we expect those numbers to start to shift back more towards single family under our current regulations as Sweet Birch starts to wrap up in the next 12 to 18 months. We do have a few condo projects here and there in the last 20 years, but no new actual permits have been pulled from traditional apartment buildings since 1986 in Black Mountain. And we looked at ADUs, which was interesting, and I did map them and find them to be largely evenly distributed in our residential districts. But there are 24 that have been permitted under our current regulations. That does not mean that there aren't others, because thank you, accessory dwelling unit, granny flats, these sorts of things. There are others that were created for this use prior to this regulation existing, but I have no way to account for them. Of those 24, 87% are on the same property as the owner. So people are doing that as part of their income or for a relative. And only a minority of them are owned by people who actually do not live in North Carolina. Actually expected that number to be higher than it is, but nice to have some data to support how those are actually appearing in town. Here are a percent of new residential versus new commercial permits. These are began in fiscal year 2010, 2011. And we normalized all of our numbers this year to be on fiscal years. We realized some of them were actually on calendar years. So if you see something that's a little different than you expected from years past, that is why. We are driven by residential development in Black Mountain. That little bump you see in commercial development around 16, 17 is Highland Farms, not an influx of large businesses in town. And here are those trends of residential units, just all types. And you'll see that the last 2 years have been significant upticks in the number of residences being built. You may remember from previous conversations we've had in this room, our land use is about 78% single-family residential. And I expect that number just to go up at this point.
When a house is permitted,
Yes, ma'am.
like that 88, do you know at that moment in time whether somebody's going to actually live in it or if they're going to use it as an Airbnb?
I cannot ask them that question to
We
issue
don't
them a
know.
building permit.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
Yeah. Here are building permit fees. These are a little lower than actuals because we did have some anomalies over the last couple of years where we had with COVID, where we would have staff being out and the county would have to come in. So that would be revenue that was sort of passed through from permit to the county for those services. And having certain types of inspections that we did not have staff who had the accurate credentials to do. So in those cases also the county would come in.
Or tell me a little bit about, and counsel a little bit about a building permit, and is costs go up depending on the square footage of the residence planned and so forth?
It does. It's a math problem. It's a complicated math problem with multipliers and things. It's driven by heated square footage, unheated square footage, and total project costs. And so there are a couple of things that help inform that.
What's the average if you had to take a guess at it?
For just the building permit and no other associated fees, $1,400, depending. I did an average not terribly long ago during budget to make sure our building permit fees were in line with other municipalities, and we were right in the pocket with others. The average house, that project costs were around $350,000, but I have seen I've been notified that 5 permits over $1.5 million are coming in.
So somebody that do a new residential unit, you've got your permit, and then you've got your impact fee,
Your system development fee.
system development fee. Is that's the primary two?
Those are the big ones.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a stormwater fee,
Right.
the post-construction, but that is determined by the amount of impervious created. And the system development is driven in residential by the number of bedrooms. Yep. So you can see that's a little over $52,000. I'm going blind. These are the number of building inspections. Again, more building inspections than this happened just a little bit when the county had to jump in, but pretty consistent over the last few years, ringing in close to 3,000 inspections a year. Now, subdivisions. Just a few little trends and observations. The absolute vast majority of our subdivision applications are exempt subdivisions, which are, it's always my fun thing to do, subdivisions that aren't actually subdivisions. By the state definition. These are typically your one lot being split into 2 lots or maybe 3 lots, no new infrastructure is needed. It's something you might do to sell a little piece of property for your retirement or leave something to your kids. Then the next coming in is those minor subdivisions, which are 4 lots or fewer. And we only see 14% of subdivision applications by type since 2010. as being major subdivisions. And this is interesting and, important to think about because there are really few opportunities to advance community goals through development, residential development, when you don't have many major subdivisions happening. Your ability to create regulations that impact these developments really diminishes when it's not a major development. So we also see with those smaller lots that we're really talking about patterns of infill development by and large. You can see these are the number of exempt subdivisions since 2010. You can see there, last year we had 21, and minors, then majors when we had 3 last year. And of those 3, I can tell you how many lots that equals just for reference. One's Village Way, 10 lots, Cherry Street, which is actually a sort of a corrective thing. There's an old parcel with many buildings on it that was parceled out into 8, and 5 over at Fay Jones as part of the Cheshire T&D area. So very few major subdivisions. Rezoning applications, it's also interesting. All rezonings since I've been here, which is 5 years this month, have been made solely looking for density increases, with the exception of one, which was last year, where somebody had a formerly used as a residence that they would like to use as an office, and that request was denied. We did adopt conditional zoning in 21. That has not been utilized yet. The UDO will explore opportunities for things like lot size flexibility and other development regulations where you can achieve and incentivize desirable types of development without needing to seek a rezoning. Rezoning should not really be the only way that you can pursue different types of uses or conditions from the government onto a parcel. This will give us a bigger toolbox. You can see never a lot of rezonings going on, just a few here and there. Notably, there are things missing that we're used to talking about all at the same time, including things like text amendments and UDOs. That's a big topic, and we'll do that in its own meeting.
Sounds good. Questions?
I have a few.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is a fair question, so just tell me it's not if it's not. Do you have a grasp as to like what percentage of land in Black Mountain you would consider developed versus undeveloped?
I have an Excel document where I'm currently working on that based on these new numbers. Yes.
Okay.
And that the caveat to that is under current zoning conditions. So if you change the zoning conditions, the number completely changes. Just, it's not hard and fast, I guess is the right way to say that.
Right. Okay. You mentioned that major subdivisions are kind of the biggest opportunity we have to work with the developer.
And commercial, yes.
And commercial. Is there any opportunity that we could consider to help shape the infill development that's happening?
Not by much.
No. Okay.
There are our authority to impose additional regulations on you just dividing your property to sell your house is not really a thing in North Carolina. It's very limited.
Okay. And then kind of with that, is your assessment of the current growth rate of a new development rate, are we as a town able to keep up with our utilities and streets and things like that? Are we able to keep up with that to the current growth rate?
I think there'd be a different question for each specific piece of infrastructure, because there's some of those I feel very confident in, and there are others I am more concerned about.
Okay.
I feel comfortable with our water. I might be more concerned about keeping up with sidewalk maintenance or street paving, for example.
And really, I mean, there's not, I'm not suggesting that we should do this, but there's not really much we can do to kind of even those things out aside from funding from the infrastructure, right?
You can, that is a tricky question.
Yeah.
There are ways you can discourage development if you wanted to. you can make it too expensive or too hard to do something in certain ways, but I'm not sure that I would say that's a good idea.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Great. Thank you, Jessica.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Good report. Okay, Josh, I think we are ready.
We are ready. Okay.
Consent agenda.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, consent agenda consists of 2 items this evening. The first one being adoption of minutes, that being July 11th, regular session meeting, July 11th, closed session meeting, July 7th, agenda meeting, and June 28th, public hearing. Item B is a call for public hearing to amend the text for residential uses in the central business district. And that'll be your consent agenda.
Great. Any questions for Josh? And hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? If none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Does any member of the public wish to make a comment on items we have under, we don't have any unfinished business, but under new business? Hearing none then, Josh, art in the afternoon lease, I suspect that's Mr. Sneed.
I think somewhere along the way, May 2, you have a new lease for it in the afternoon. They've requested an additional year at the same terms, and I think under the circumstances, that's what's been indicated that this board would approve. Obviously, if you have the ability to change rent or anything, but the draft that's before you, the lease before you, is just another year at the same terms conditions.
Questions for Ron? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the art in the afternoon lease as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. Downtown parking lot, parking space.
Yes,
Parking
it should be
space
parking
discussion.
space. So this was the continued discussion from last month's meeting. We talked about, there was a request to close a parking space in a town-owned parking lot. Attorney Sneed and I put together, and you've got this piece of paper in front of you, or you should. We've got some criteria in here on how we would potentially go about doing this, should the board choose to do so. And if you don't mind, I'll read through these real fast. The first one being that and this would all be for the space to potentially be closed. Number 1 being the space leads to, and if closed, provides access to a pedestrian or vehicular travel way. 2 being the pedestrian travel way does not connect to a sidewalk. 3, the vehicular travel way does not have another access point for vehicles, or the creation of a new access point by closing the parking space will create a safer access point for vehicles. 4, the pedestrian or vehicular travel way is the only legal access to properties, or the pedestrian or vehicular way is the most practical or the safer access to properties or amenities. And lastly, closing of the parking space will not create a hazardous condition.
So Josh, maybe just for the public, why are we doing this? Why is it such an unusual thing that we have to come up with new criteria?
So I've been doing this about 15 years and have never been asked to close a parking space in a town-owned lot, or a parking space period for that matter. And I think some things like this come up at times. We don't have anything on the books that tells us how we might do this. And I think for speaking with Attorney Sneed, and I think all of council and mayor, it seemed to be a good idea to go ahead and put something together that would outline how we would go about doing that if we chose to do that. This specific space really that is called into question is a space in the parking lot off of Broadway, which the space specifically in question leads right into the back of Black Mountain Ale House, Miranda. If you've been down there, you'll notice there's a set of steps that come up. There's a landing pad. There's also, I think, an apartment or something upstairs there. But there's no, you park right up to it. There's no way to get in and out of that easily. The owner of the person that operates Black Mountain Ale House actually requested this, did talk to me about it, And my conversation with him was, we really don't have any process in place to make this happen. But moving forward, this may be something we need to look at. So what we've got here is our first try at some regulations or some policy statements on if we were to close a parking space in a publicly maintained lot.
Are these meant to be, and I realize maybe it's a first draft, I mean, are these meant to be, you have to meet so many of these, you meet one of them? I mean, I don't see any ands or ors or anything like that there.
I think the way we were looking at it was really, it would meet all of these and not and or, not 1, 2, or 3, but all of these.
All of these would need to be met.
Now, some of them address slightly different situations, so it'd be one or the other. One addresses a pedestrian way, another a vehicular way.
Okay.
So, personally, these look okay to me. I can't think of anything else to add or suggest, and I think it's a good start. So with the way we move this forward is maybe come back with a draft ordinance next month.
Do you want this as an ordinance or just as a procedure in your procedures manual?
I don't know.
Because-
Council, what do you think? What's your recommendation?
I think either one will work. I thought the idea was to come up with some sort of guideline so that staff, when it comes to the request, doesn't have to come to you every time, since it's probably going to happen once every 50 years. But they would have a policy in place, and if somebody came to them, they could look at it and say, we might consider this, or we can say, no, you don't get close to the guidelines, we're not going to do it. But it's just a guideline for staff. But you do it either way, adopt as part of the procedure, or it's so infrequent, expect to be so infrequent, it doesn't look like it should be in the ordinance book.
So that being the case, come back next month with something that would be, where does something like that go with staff procedure? Some sort of
We've got like a policy manual,
policy manual?
yeah, for different issues from, just all over the place.
Council, is that agreeable to come back next month with that, what it would look like as a policy, all written out, and
Sure.
clear?
Sure.
Yeah.
Josh, I do have one question. While this is a closing down of spaces, we have altered spaces. For example, on Cherry Street, the pickup, the 10-minute pickup spaces we did during the pandemic, during early, which I actually think those are still there.
They are.
And we've closed down a space for a police space at the bottom of Cherry Street. I know that that's the town doing, but I mean, should the town be following similar procedures when making decisions like that? I mean, is that?
I'm going to refer to the attorney.
Those are typical adjustments or dealings you deal with parking spaces, with delivery areas. I don't know if you need a policy. It's obvious for a crosswalk, for instance. If you put in a crosswalk on Broadway where it was recommended, you may lose a parking space or two there. Those are typical activities. This one was a little odd. It was asking just to close one. It's for something that the town typically does not do, and I think that's what made this weird. And the council, or at least your staff, said if we put in a crosswalk, we know we've got to have the authority to close those spaces. If we want deliveries to come and go safely, we've got to make provisions for it. If we want a practical way of having police presence, we have the ability to do that. But as Josh said, and all the time he's done that, and I've done this is the first time anybody requested the closing of a parking space for basically the benefit of private properties. Although the benefits the public, but it's been take them to private properties. It was just a different animal that came to you.
Do we need to wait till next month? I mean,
Yeah, this really is in the form that we want to see it.
I mean, it could be in a better form for sure, yes. This was kind of here, this is our first chance at it. See what y'all think.
It also wasn't available to the public, so I think we should.
That's a
That's right.
brainstorming list, yeah.
That's right. Good, is that good for everybody?
Yeah.
Thank you. The revised Charles D. Owen Babe Ruth memo of understanding. It must be Josh is gonna handle it.
It is. As you all are aware, we have a few third-party groups that we work with in town to give them facilities and things they need to run their programs. This is one of those groups, and I came before you guys in the fall of last year with the MOU that you guys approved. for the 2022 season. After they completed their spring season, we met with the group and talked about a few things of how to improve, how to make things better. And so we added 2 changes which are highlighted in the sheet that you have. The first, as you know, we have limited resources when it comes to facilities, and we have a lot of competing needs. So we wanted to put some language in here to protect our programs that we're running, to make sure that we had what we needed, kind of first and foremost, before we started letting other groups and parties come in and use our facilities. The second change deals with field maintenance, and basically what we faced this year, but staff to meet their everyday needs with lining fields and whatnot. And so we met with them, and they were willing to do their own field lining, and so we added some language in there that allows them to do that.
So this is not new, it's already in there, but just in looking through it, I wondered about 11 and 14. And it just seemed that like the insurance, the Babe Ruth is required, Charles D. Lynn Babe Ruth is required to have an insurance policy naming the town of Black Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And if we wanted, to flesh that out just a little bit more, like the amount of insurance.
Yeah, we could certainly do that. Some of these things have been carried over for years in this.
Now I
But
understand.
like we do with special event permits and things of that nature, we require groups to provide a certificate of liability, and so we do require that from these groups as well.
That'd be good. Well, that'd be good to just add in there if we could. Do
Yep.
we need to vote on this tonight? Is baseball season over?
They are.
They're gonna start.
They're doing fall ball, which is why we had this on the agenda for this month.
How much time we have?
They have already started practicing, so it's kind of pushing it through.
They
So
weren't waiting on us anyway.
It's one of those things, by the way, we're gonna start tomorrow.
yeah, so
Yeah, so I think that would be good.
Okay, I can certainly add that in there.
And then also on the background check,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe there's only one way to do a background check, and that just means what it means, but there are third-party vendors do them all, right?
Right. So I know the town has a vendor that we use for our volunteers. I can't speak to who they use for their volunteers, but
I think that might be good just to kind of pinpoint that a little bit.
Okay.
It's just places where liability kind of.
yeah, absolutely.
arises,
It's children, so safety.
So, I'll leave it. I mean, obviously you all need to vote on it, but I wonder if there's a way you could vote on it with those changes, with those amendments in it. When we move through it, or maybe the town attorney would think it might be better to do it next month.
I think you've just got 2 issues. One is that you want them to provide you with proof of liability insurance, and that could be added. You can either put a number on that, or Josh could just tell us what number they usually ask of others, and we'll use that number for insurance coverage.
And have them list who they use for background check.
Yeah, they would provide us with the agency they use. I can put it in there. They'll give town notice of whatever agency they use for background checks on their volunteers. And then that gives Josh a chance to vet those services.
How about if we said, we'll do extensive background checks on a town of Black Mountain approved, through a town of Black Mountain approved vendor? That way they just have to mention it.
That would work,
We
yeah.
don't need the name. Does that sound good to everybody? So we can vote on this memo of understanding as presented with those 2 amendments, if that's clear enough for everybody.
So are we trying to put a number on the insurance? Or,
It's going to be put on it.
okay.
I would say that they'd be required to provide certificate of insurance commensurate with any other group that asks for permits for use of town property.
Yeah, I have to do some research to see what other groups are doing, because I don't know a number off the top of my head.
But that would cover it.
Yeah.
It'd cover it. So, is that clear enough for everybody on insurance and on the background checks? So, I entertain a motion for approval with the memo of understanding as amended, as it will be amended.
So moved.
Thank you. Any other discussions or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. So now we're down to the bike boulevard.
Absolutely. So we talked about this a little bit at our agenda meeting. So we've been working on the design for the bike boulevard. and we've come to the point where we need to name it. So we did put this out in our online sources and received some votes on those names. And if I can find those, please read them, Savannah. That's why I dig through here.
So the top votes were Gray Eagle, it got 8 votes, Lake Creek got 7 votes, and then there was a 3-way tie between Flat Creek Extension, Sourwood, and Tar Wheels with 6 votes apiece.
All right. So council, what's your pleasure?
The public has spoken. Who am I to go against the
Well, would you care to make a motion?
I sure would. Let's name it Gray Eagle. Oh, that's a motion.
Thank you. So, Councilmember King has made a motion to name the Bike Boulevard the Gray Eagle Bike Boulevard.
Which we should say was Black Mountain was originally named or I guess known as the Gray Eagle,
That's
right?
right. It was. That's true.
So, any questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye. And opposed, no. On to board appointments. The Active Mobility Commission, 2 3-year terms ending June the 30th, 2025. 2 vacant seats. Were there more than 2 applicants?
There were. So the Active Mobility Commission reviewed 3 applications for 2 vacant seats. They reviewed applications from Michelle Knight, Kyle Cole, and Kevin Bates. It's a little confusing. At the time they originally voted, there was only 1 vacant seat, and they nominated Michelle Knight to fill that vacant seat. But they knew that it was very likely a member would be resigning before these appointments were made. So as a backup, they also appointed Kyle Cole to fill what was possibly a second vacant seat, which has now come to pass. So there are 2 vacant seats, and their recommendations were Michelle Knight and Kyle Cole.
And so since we do have 3 applicants, we need to do our
Yeah, so
ballot.
you all have ballots in front of you. I'll come around and collect those and read them when you're ready.
All right, ready to do it?
I just circled the names this time so I don't have to read my handwriting. Thank you.
Okay, so we have Councilmember Pertiller nominates Michelle Knight and Kyle Cole. Councilmember Hay nominates Michelle Knight and Kyle Cole. Vice Mayor Stone also nominates Michelle Knight and Kyle Cole. Councilmember King nominates Michelle Knight and Kyle Cole. And Councilmember Christie nominates Michelle Knight and Kyle Cole.
Such unity is admirable. ABC Board, and we are appointing
I think we have to vote on it, right?
Oh, well, we do, don't we? Yep, all right, all those in favor of what you just confirmed that you're doing, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. ABC Board appointment of a chair.
Yes, so I spoke to Sharon Tabor, who serves on the ABC board. She may be here. Are you here? Yes, so I spoke to Sharon about, if anyone indicated any interest in serving as chair or what the general feeling was. Amanda Nichols, who is the newest member, has no interest in being chairperson. Both Sam Hobson and Sharon are open to being chair, and Sharon recommended that you vote for seniority, which would be Sam Hobson.
That's admirable. Any questions on that? And how do we do this? Can we just vote? Can we just do it?
Yes, you can just, somebody make a motion.
This is the old-fashioned way, huh? All right, so I'll entertain a motion for chair.
I'll move that we appoint Sam Hobson as the chair of the ABC board.
All right. Is there a second? We don't need a second. Is there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
And opposed, no. So you made it out, Sharon, without. So that is it. We don't have a public hearing. We're down to the town attorney. Do you have anything to share with us, Ron?
Nothing extra this week.
All right, how about you, Josh?
I've got a few things here. I'll try to be brief, but wanted to update you. I hate to do this in my comments, but I wanted to update you on some projects that we've got going on. It's been a little bit since I've touched base with you, at least publicly. I'll start off with our FEMA work on our golf course bridge. That work was set to begin at the end of July on the 27th. The contractor pulled off for an emergency, and he will be back mid to late August for the concrete for the abutments. So that should be coming very soon. Flat Creek Greenway, kind of the same thing. I am meeting the contractor on site this week, and he has told me he will begin work on August the 22nd. That is the tentative date we're gonna shoot for. Montreat Road emergency signal work. I met with DOT on site. I guess it's been probably 2 weeks ago. So instead of, if you'll recall, this is something that's been ongoing for a while, but the intention of this was to have a button in the fire department we'd be able to push to stop the lights so they could get through traffic easier. We are still moving to do that. However, we're not gonna have to run, hopefully. The engineers think we don't have to run any power to set any of this up. It's all gonna be done wirelessly. So I'm excited to see that happen. He is saying this month sometime, but don't hold him to that, but I'll keep you up to date on when that comes in. Lake Tomahawk Dam repairs moving forward. State's reviewing that, have been for a few months. Army Corps is also reviewing. One thing I did find out from the engineers, we do not have to follow the trout buffer moratorium, which was really gonna stick us in the fall. You really can't do any work at all in the fall or the winter, but we're not gonna be affected by that at all. So I would see this taken off this fall, hopefully start doing construction on that project. Solar panels at Carver, was hoping they would begin today. I met with the contractor Friday. They were supposed to drop those off today and start installing. Said it would be about a week for them to get them installed and get them online. So that should be quick once it gets going. Highway 70 water line project. Mr. Mayor, I told you engineering was underway. I was mistaken. We are actually waiting for the survey to be done. And that survey has taken this long. I know I've spoken before, but surveys sometimes now are 8 months out to wait for on a survey.
Well, we
So-
should be there then.
The contract is signed and we're waiting for the survey to be done. And I talked to Jesse last week. He said he's about 2 weeks out on survey. So hopefully soon that's coming. Veterans Park bathrooms, we've ordered the materials, waiting on those to come in to get those built. That's to finish out our Part F grant. The stone steps below the art center. I don't know if you've seen those yet, but if you haven't, take a look at them. We got those finished last week.
They look good.
Beautification said they look real. I think they look real good
They
too.
look really
but-
good.
But that looks right. Kind of transformed that whole hill. So take a look at that when you get a chance. We're also working on the one-way analysis of Honeycutt Street. That contract's been signed. That engineer is underway doing that work. Our pay study will kick off on August 15th. That's next Monday. We've been working behind the scenes, getting stuff to the consultant, a list of all our employees, their current salaries, the grades, all the kind of the back end work to get to them. But that kickoff meeting will be next Monday to start that.
How long do you anticipate it to be?
His work will probably take 2 to 3 months. I would say by the end of the year, maybe a little before, we should have numbers in front of us. Parks and Recreation Master Plan. I wanted to add an agenda item tonight and kind of select this consultant, but I think Josh and I have a little more work to do on the consultant for the Parks and Rec Master Plan. We did get all those in. They were due Friday, so we've spent time today, I know, and over the weekend looking at those proposals and scoring them. We ended up getting, I think, 5 proposals in.
Let me ask you, you may recall that the guy for the National Park
Yes.
Service, is that, you putting that in the hopper to see how that works?
I am waiting to hear back from him now.
Great, thank you. Because, it could be that if it didn't work, it just doesn't seem to work well for the entire plan.
Maybe they could do pieces.
They could do pieces of it, in particular, maybe the Hemphill property.
Good idea. We're also working with Withers and Ravenel. If you recall, they did a study for us on our water rates a few months ago, but we are working with them now on some stormwater and water project funding for the fall cycle. So Jessica and I have met with them a couple of times and have given them some projects, and other water projects. Really, a couple big ones are NC9 water line and then Montreat Road water line, both about $1 million a piece.
Yeah.
in probably 10-year ago numbers. So those are going to be more expensive now, I'm sure.
You know, there was $888 million in the state budget for just that, these for projects that'll be grant approved for water and sewer. So
Yeah.
once we get moving into it, you know, there's hopefully some opportunity there.
I think so. We also, I'm almost finished, working with Black Mountain Counseling Center to provide our employees some mental health services should they need them. Also putting together an employee recognition program for our employees. Survey work is underway for the Charlotte Street sidewalk. That started last week. And then lastly, we've done, this has been a long time coming. We've ordered some ultrasonic meters. We've got 2 of those installed. We've got the other 2 here now. We're waiting on vaults to come in to put those in. But I'll say with these ultrasonic meters, we've already found a leaking check valve
How about
with
that?
these ultrasonic meters, so that's positive. And the ones we have in place right now are in the ground at Timber Park and the Asheville Booster Station. And that's it for me.
Great, thanks. Questions for Josh on that?
Josh, since you're on the roll, do you have an update on the phase 2 of the sidewalk down by CBS and the crosswalk?
Yes, email a couple weeks ago, DOT is supposed to do a on-site meeting. I haven't heard back from that on-site meeting, but I will follow up with them and let you know.
Thank you.
All right. Council?
Oh my goodness, Sourwood is next weekend. We can't not mention that.
Yeah, thank you.
Hope
Next
everybody-
weekend.
Yeah.
This weekend.
When does it kick off?
This
The
weekend.
13th and the 14th, right?
That's right.
13th and 14th.
This next?
This weekend.
This
And Pam's
Same?
ukulele
Yeah,
game.
same one, yeah, that
That's a
Monday?
major thing.
All right, when does it start?
It starts at 9 o'clock, Saturday morning, 9 to 8 on Saturday, 9 to 5 on Sunday, and we still need volunteers.
All right.
I see 1, 2.
Anyone else, council?
I wanted to recognize the chief and his team for the National Night Out work that they did
Absolutely,
last week.
absolutely. Great job. Great job. For those who weren't aware, Chief, why don't you just stand up if you would, or you could come up, but just share with the public a little bit about First Night and the success you had with it.
So I think this year was the first year of National Night Out, and you know, approximately throughout the night, I would estimate that we had somewhere in the midst of well over 500 people that showed, and then we were able to do a tour of the building, and I estimate that there was about 70 that did a tour throughout the building, and we have heard a lot of positive comments. It's a great time for us to interact with the community, get to know the community, and so we plan to do it every year and hopefully make it even bigger and better next year because it was our first run at it.
Yeah, I don't know if any other council members had an opportunity. Councilmember Tiller was there and the same time I was, and then I think I really left before the real crowd started rolling in when it got a little darker and cooler.
Yes, sir. I think we might push it a little bit later. Might be a little something we do next year.
Although bringing
time.
little children out
Yep.
is earlier is helpful, you know?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, great
Thank
job,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
And the objective is to get the community to know your law enforcement folks.
Yep. Enhanced community relations.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
great.
sir.
It was well done. Good job. Look forward to next year's. Actually, somebody wanted to know the date of the next one when I was telling them about it, so.
It'll be the exact same time next year. First Tuesday of every August.
First Tuesday of August. Great. That's good to know. So the only thing I would add is the volunteer luncheon is planned for Thursday, October the
13th. Let me confirm that.
That sounds right, because I think Monday's the 10th.
Let me see. Yes, Thursday, October 13th in the Public Safety Building.
Yeah, that's the
Yes.
volunteer luncheon, and just for all council members to get that on your calendar. So,
Oh, and we also have Citizens Academy coming up. I almost forgot to mention that. So applications are due on August 29th. There's a lot of information on our website, but if you're interested in learning
more about how the town functions and who you can contact with your questions and concerns, Citizens Academy is a great way to learn. So let me know if you have questions and visit our website.
Great, thank you. I think that's it. Do we need to go into a closed session this evening?
I don't think there's anything to add at this point.
Great, well, unless one of the board members wants to make that suggestion, we'll not go down that road. How about that? So that said, I think we've covered all the items on the agenda, and thank you, and meeting adjourned.